We like to imagine that we are at the center of things, that somehow the story of existence bends towards us, that our lives sit at the focal point of meaning, and that our day to day experience carries a deep sense of purpose and weight. But the moment we begin to zoom out, even slightly, that illusion starts to dissolve. If you were to compress the entire history of the universe into a single calendar year, with the Big Bang occurring at midnight on January the 1st, everything that we know, every galaxy, every star, every planet, every living organism, would unfold gradually across that year through vast stretches of time that are almost impossible to comprehend. And then, right at the very end, in the final seconds before midnight on December the 31st, human beings appear. All of recorded history, every civilization, every moment of love and loss, every struggle and achievement exists within that final fleeting instant. And even that perspective is too small. Because if we extend that timeline forward, mapping not just the past but the potential future of the universe, and our entire existence so far is not at the end of the story, but closer to the very beginning. Where we are right now is just seconds into January the 1st, while the vast majority of the universe's lifespan still stretches out ahead in a slow fading that we will never witness. And if we shift from time to space, the scale becomes even more disorienting. If the observable universe were mapped onto the size of Earth, the largest known structure, named the Hercules Corona Borealis Great Wall, would stretch roughly the distance from Sydney to Brisbane. And on that same scale, our entire planet would be smaller than an atom, and each of us smaller than that still. When you zoom out like this, what you find is not a universe arranged around us, but one in which we are almost vanishingly minute. The Earth is a small planet orbiting an ordinary star, one of hundreds of billions in a single galaxy, which itself is only one among hundreds of billions of galaxies spread across an observable universe, so vast that the edges aren't even defined by strict boundaries, but only by the limits of what light has allowed us to see. There is no center where we sit. There is no indication, at least from what we can see, that the universe was built with us in mind, and if there was a plan, it's difficult to reconcile with the 13.8 billion years it took for us to arrive. The idea that we are special in some grand cosmic sense, that everything was designed for us, is something to be held at very least with deep skepticism and deep suspicion. We are small, we are temporary, we are, in every physical sense, dust, and we are embedded in a mystery. And yet, something unexpected happens within this dust. Out of a lawful, expanding, and ultimately fading universe, matter organizes itself into increasingly complex forms. Atoms into molecules, molecules into cells, cells into living systems, until eventually something emerges that can experience, that can reflect, that can feel what it is like to exist at all. And so in this vast and seemingly indifferent cosmos, something arises that can say, however briefly, that I am here. And given this, perhaps the important question is no longer whether we matter in some grand cosmic sense or whether there's a predefined meaning written into the structure of the universe, but rather, what does it mean that a universe like this gives rise to beings that can care? What does it mean that a universe like this gives rise to beings that can care? You could respond to this realization with indifference, concluding that if everything is impermanent, if all structures eventually dissolve, and if we're so small that nothing ultimately matters, that we are simply dust in the wind, a brief coming and going with no deeper significance. And that is one coherent response. It's a common response, but it isn't the only one. And there is another way of meeting this reality, one that doesn't deny the scale or the impermanence of things, but also doesn't collapse into disengagement. It's the choice to remain open, to participate fully in the brief window of time in which experience is possible, and to relate to others and to the world with care rather than withdrawal, even in the absence of guarantees. This is what the Sufi poet and mystic Ibn Arabi described as the religion of love. Not as a doctrine or a system of belief, but as a way of orienting oneself towards reality. It's the recognition that despite our differences, we're all participating in the same fragile process of being alive, each of us shaped by our histories, our wounds, and our limited understanding. Yet all of us at the same time capable, however imperfectly, of connection, compassion, and care. To take this seriously is to see others not as obstacles or abstractions, but as beings who are, like everybody, small, temporary, and trying to make sense of something vast and uncertain. It is to recognize that beneath our defenses and distortions, there is a shared vulnerability, and that responding to that vulnerability with care rather than indifference changes the quality of the world that we participate in. Love, in this sense, is not sentimental and it is not naive. It doesn't deny suffering and it doesn't guarantee outcomes, but rather it's a disciplined stance, a refusal to reduce reality to fear, control, or withdrawal. It's the commitment to meet what is in front of us as they are without turning away or trying to dominate them, without trying to control them or input our own strict narratives onto them. And in doing this, something beautiful happens. The universe, which on its largest scales appears indifferent and silent, becomes through us a place where connection occurs, where suffering is recognized and where care is extended, where meaning is not imposed from above but enacted from within. By doing this, we don't become the center of the universe, we don't become the main characters, but we do become the place where the universe becomes aware of itself, however briefly. We remain small, we remain temporary, and we remain in every physical sense as negligible as dust. But at the same time, we are also the part of the universe that can feel, that can reflect, and that can choose how to relate to what is given. And perhaps that is enough not to make us central or permanent, but to make this moment, this brief, fragile window of awareness, something worth inhabiting fully. Because though we may be dust, we are dust that can feel.